Okay, so this begins a little mini series of videos I'm going to do about Dodge pickups from the 70s and what the differences are. I decided to do this video simply because suddenly I had a whole variety of them on the yard within the last month. And some are still here: 72, 73, 74, 76, 77, 78, and an 80. That covers quite a bit of the variety. In addition to the variety that I currently have, I've got all kinds of stuff, parts over the years I've gathered up. Some I still have, some I've sold. So I think I've developed a fairly good knowledge base, and I want to pass that on. This is going to be the same intro for all the videos. So if you're watching this and it's not the first one, then go back and check out my channel or the playlist that I hopefully will set up, and then you can watch all of them. I'm going to try to keep them in that 10 to 15 minute range, so I really don't know how many I'm going to have. I might have 2, I might have 15. Well, I won't have 15. I might have like 4, something like that. It kind of depends. So, but I'm going to do it in a logical manner as best I can. So the logical progression and the way these videos are going to work, the way I'm going to put them up, is how you would encounter a vehicle, whether it's online or whether you see one sitting on the side of the road for sale. Exterior first, what are the differences? Then you would probably get inside, check out the cab, then that's going to be the next thing, the interior. Then underneath the hood, the various differences under the hood. And then the last part would be mechanical and miscellaneous oddball things. Not so much mechanical, because most of the mechanical changes are going to be purely option driven, and I'm not going to get deep into options and packages and stuff like that. I'll mention some of the things, but I'm not going to get into this year had this option, this one had this, because that changed way too much. And with pickups, it was, and actually anything in the 70s really, the whole deal was if you could pay for it, the factory would make it for you. And I have seen some really weird stuff that was not, quote, available, but yet somehow was available. So I'm not, like I say, I'm just not going to get into that part of it. So here's something that I think really needs to be mentioned the way I'm doing this video. You're not going to see pristine vehicles. You're not going to see the show trucks. I'm dealing with just old, sometimes quite beat up trucks, original stuff that I don't believe has been changed or modified. In some cases, maybe never even worked on a day in its life in the last 40, almost 50 years on some of these things. The reason for that is simple. I want to know the way it was when it left the factory, and that's what I'm trying to show to you, is the way it left. Now, a nice show truck, it could be 100% perfect as factory, but I don't know that because so many of these parts are so similar, you won't notice. And I'll show you, especially when you start talking about the pickup boxes. There are a lot of differences in the boxes over the years, way more than I ever realized until, again, like I say, I started looking at them and realizing that, oh, this is different, that's different, and then really started looking at all the differences that there are. So you can see a bunch of beat up rusty things. You can see stuff like this: busted windshield, rust on it, whatever, trashy or rat infested interiors. But so long as the pieces are original, that's what I'm going for. That's what you're going to see. So please keep that in mind. Don't diss the trucks. They are what they are. For the first video in this series, I'm not going to talk about much this time. Grill and trim, basically. I kind of wanted to do more in this first video. However, the next thing I was going to talk about was body panels and stuff, and I didn't want to make the video super long, and I didn't want to cut the next section in half. Half the body panels now, half later. So just a couple things this time around. The next video coming down the pipe, part 2, is all going to be body panels from the bumper filler panel in the front all the way to the tailgate in the back, and then we'll work on to the next one after that. So enjoy, and I hope you stick around for the following. Okay, the grill. 1972 in 1973 had this style grill. I was sure they had a metal version, like a steel version that was just painted. I could have swore I've seen those before, but I can find no information about them anymore, so maybe I was dreaming, or if they really do exist, they're just like super rare. Interesting thing I just learned very recently, these grills, already by 1977, so 4 years old or less, this grill was obsolete. It was no longer serviced, so then you had to go to the next newer style grill, the 74 through 6. So again, 72, 73 grill. All right, so I admit this isn't the greatest version of this I have. I've got nice ones, but they're packed away in storage because somebody painted part of it black. But this is the style that ran from 74 through 6, 74, 5, and 6. And I will walk in here a little closer. See, because this stuff that's painted black shouldn't be painted black. It should all be aluminum. So that's the style for those 3 years. Here's a little better version of that 74, 5, 6 grill. It's in my 76 Ram Charger, but then I've got a push guard in front of it, so you can't see it quite as well either. But that's what it's supposed to look like without all the black. Although they do have, I'll zoom in here, right there, those are supposed to be painted black. Just little details, so from a distance you don't see those pieces, but you know, minor details, and sometimes those are important when you're trying to make it as right as you can. Okay, so the grill for 1977 and 1978 is the same. There's no discernible difference. The only difference you'll notice in them overall is the marker lights. 77s had clear ones, and the first few months of 78 also had clear ones. I just learned this recently based off of some information from a Hollander's interchange book, and Hollanders, you know, they know their stuff. They get their information straight from the manufacturer, so I think they're in good shape. And there are the cats playing, I see, on this cold January day. Here we have the last style of grill for the 70s. This is actually on an 80. There are two versions of this grill, with the round headlights and then with the rectangle headlights, like what you would see in the 79 Little Red Express. That was the fancier model, automatically got the 4 headlight system, but you could option that up. You could actually option down also, because whatever it took to sell a vehicle, they were fine with. But you know, generally speaking, the fancy trucks had the 4 headlights. The cheaper ones, like this one, is an old Air Force rig, just the cheap. And then the other thing, the 2 versions of this grill, you can see all this is painted black. That is a 1980 thing. The 79s was not painted, so it was all bright. The 80s had that area painted black. Otherwise, exactly the same grill. So if you find a 79 with black in it, then someone swapped out that grill. If you find an 80 with it's all bright, again, someone swapped out the grill. But otherwise, same grill, just a little bit of paint treatment that makes them different. So here's the fancy style trim. You could have 72, 3, 4, and 5, and I think maybe 6. At least it showed up in the brochures for 76. I've never seen one on a 76, but so this is the wider stuff. You can see it has wood grain in there where it kind of used to be. It's all cracked and faded and stuff. You know, very fancy. I mean, this is like the second one I've ever seen like this that had the really wide trim on, because it was the Adventurer SE, although you can't really see the Adventurer anymore. And it even had matching wood grain in the tailgate, and to put the wood grain in the tailgate, the embossed Dodge is not there. So I think whether that was a different tailgate or whether this was just a late 73 where they had these tailgates, I don't know. But that is one of the options for side trim in the early years. So then we have a step down in trim level. It's just a narrower trim. This too is an Adventurer, but you could option this trim into other things, but it came standard on the Adventurers.
Just like the fancier stuff, just a narrower version. I know why they probably got rid of this after a few years. It was labor intensive because there were holes drilled and everything. These are all held on with spring clips and nuts and bolts. And of course, you always had the option for the cheaper trucks, which would have been no trim at all. And those were kind of your two options for trim in the early years. And interestingly enough, if you had the baseline truck, was still considered a custom, which to me is weird, but I get it. They had the holes punched in the box or the fender, wherever, for the other Adventurer, Adventure SE, whatever the other model numbers or names were. I had to put something there. So they had to call them something, and they called everything at least a custom, just to fill the holes in the box, I guess. Starting in 1975 is when the other set of trim showed up. And so 75 and 6 were very plentiful years for trim options, because there was a single bead of chrome like this 78 Roundup has up top. There was also just a single wide trim on the bottom. And then there was, of course, the combination of both of them, upper and lower. And the two tones, depending on years and two-tone treatments, would either follow the essentially striped pattern, or it could also just go from this line up. And then, of course, there was options within the options. Most common is having the black in the middle of the wide lower, having an argent and black in there, a little fancier chrome, and then of course you can see that two-tone is just on the bottom. And there is also, you know, this with a wood grain in the middle for the really fancy models. Well, then taillights, this piece of trim here, this extension, you know, varied whether it had the taillight surround or not. This could go all the way around as one piece, or it could kind of come together right there. You know, trim options were plentiful, and they were sometimes confusing, especially when it comes to looking for parts. And I guess the cat is going to say hi again. So, oh, and then there's also one more trim. We have this is on a 75 cab. The trim that goes around the back of the cab to two-tone it. This is also a design they kind of kept through the 80s a little bit also. And then we have the drip rail moldings, which that was started at the beginning of the run. Little ditty on other trim here. 7234 chrome windshield trim was like this style. It was clipped on. There's a screw in the top corner each side. The clips are very, very difficult to get off. This is a pain in the ass to deal with, especially now after decades. But they're still doable. You don't need to put these back on, other than you will see the buttons for the clips. And these, of course, were on the fancy models. And then this is also the back window, similar style. These are extremely hard to find. And again, 7234 is all the farther they went with that particular style of chrome. And windshield chrome was no longer on the side. It would just be like in the part of the lock strip itself. Same thing that goes for the back window. If it was going to have trim on the back, it was no longer on the edge on the side. It was part of the gasket, not the actual lock strip. One other thing to mention with side trim, this is for the front on the fender, the very front. The marker light would go into this area. They had two different versions of this. They started with pot metal, and there's studs in the back. Here's one, and there's a couple up front there. After a couple years, they went to a plastic piece, and then realistically the only difference you can see is that there are some screw holes in the plastic ones. I don't have a plastic one handy, but from the outside they're the same. They're interchangeable. Nothing seems to be different that way. It's just that they are two different kinds.